Hey class, today I'm going to show you and talk to you a little bit about glazing. So things we'll do is learn about glaze. So we're going to be applying this to your mug. You're going to get some painting supplies. You're going to have about $15 worth of painting supplies in your cabinet, so make sure you take care of them. Brushes, you want to make sure you wash them gently and make sure that they're stored with the bristles facing up. And if you don't have a can in your cabinet, you want to make sure you get one of those to store your brushes in. You'll also have a palette with a lid. So before you can put glaze on anything, you have to make sure that it has been bisque fired. That's the first firing where all that moisture is removed. You should see that it's changed colors. It's going to be a pink kind of white color instead of that gray color that our clay started off with. So we'll talk about temperature a little bit. So this is our ceramics thermometer. This is where your mugs have already been bisque fired. That's 1941 degrees, and that's what we call cone 04. They're going to be fired for our low fire glazes at cone 06. Notice that at this point right here, we go from 01, and then the numbers don't have a 0, and they go the opposite direction. So this point right here crosses over to the high fire range. This crosses over to the low fire range. So if it's got a 0 in front of it, it means it's a low fire glaze. So what the heck is a cone? We'll talk about that. We'll use that word a lot, so it's important to understand what it is. So the cone is this piece of clay, and they will all melt at specific temperatures. And even though our kiln is computer controlled, we still refer to cones when we're talking about glazes. So essentially, these cones, when they get close to the melting point, they'll start to bend over, and then when they get right to the melting point, they'll just curve just a little bit, and you know that's what temperature your kiln's at. So again, even though ours is computer controlled, it's still easier to say it's a cone 06 glaze than say, Mr. Sawyers, will you please fire that to 1819 degrees for me? So what's in glaze? Glaze is powdered glass, clay, and chemical colorants, and they're all suspended in water. That's the liquid part of it. What does it do? It creates a permanent glass-like coating. It actually becomes part of the project, so we're relying on it to actually soak into the clay, and it really makes the clay hard. So it provides durability, makes sure that it's easily cleaned, and it's thousands of different colors, textures, and it's not paint. So the true color of a glaze really won't show up until it's fired. So the quality of your glaze job actually won't show up until it's fired either. So it's very important that you pay attention carefully to the demonstrations, demo videos, and my instructions. Otherwise, you'll end up with a bad glaze job. So a lot of kids will say, Mr. Sawyers, are you sure this is going to be, this tan color? Are you sure this is going to be white? It's blue in the jar. So that's the first thing to know is trust the jar. Some colors will be similar. The red here is just a pinky color, but when it's fired, it turns this normal shade of red. Same thing with the yellow. Same thing with the blue. But this light blue actually turns white, and this green actually is a clear glaze, and the black just kind of starts off as gray. So what needs done before you can apply glaze? So again, it's only applied to something that has been bisque fired. If you put it on something that has not been fired once already, I can't do anything to help you. That project is not going to go in my kiln. That's typically when a project will explode. And I love you, but I'm not putting a project that might explode in the kiln. So you'll select a color scheme. You'll fill out a glaze record sheet, and you'll get one of those in class. You'll dry foot. That means we're not going to glaze the very bottom of your project, but also 1/8 of an inch along there. That because the glaze turns liquid in the kiln and can run, we don't want it sticking to my kiln. Again, I love you, but I don't want your project permanently stuck to my kiln. So we'll always wipe the project off before you get started. And honestly, that's kind of how I'll know whether you watch this video or not. If you jump in there and don't wipe your project off, I know you didn't watch this. So you use a damp sponge, and we're not trying to wash it like we're washing dishes. We're just trying to get rid of any dust and any kind of oily fingerprints that might be on it. We'll carefully shake the glaze. Make sure that the lid is on tight. You cannot trust the person that was there before you to have put the lid on tightly, so make sure you do that before you start shaking the glaze up. So using more than one glaze. Again, glazes rely on chemicals to create colors. They don't mix like paint, so you're not going to be able to mix a blue glaze and a red glaze and end up with a purple glaze. It just doesn't work that way because it relies on the chemicals. If you overlap glazes, you put one over top of another, the colors are going to react in random ways. So you can see on this one, the white spots showing through because this person put blue glaze right over top of the white. Not saying that's ugly, but in a lot of cases, it'll be ugly. And for this first project, you're going to try to make sure that you don't overlap your glazes so that you see what they look like alone. And you can always use a pencil to plan out where your glazes are going to change color. That pencil will actually burn out in the kiln. You won't see it. So regular pencil burns out in the kiln, and you won't see the remnants of that. So when you're choosing a glaze, we've got two main types of glazes. We have opaque glaze. Opaque means not see-through. So these are great for the insides of containers. They've actually got more clay in them, which makes them resist cracking. So they're great for the inside of something, and they're actually easier to apply, and you don't have to be quite as perfect with them. Then we have translucent. Translucent means it's kind of like stained glass. So every one of the tiles on the wall has a texture imprinted in it. So you can see where this texture, basically it holds more glaze. So if you see that it's darker in those spots, that means it's layered up thicker, and that makes it harder to see through. So that's how you can tell it's a translucent glaze. So sometimes translucent is great if you have some texture or some incising like you see here that you want to bring out, but they are harder to apply and apply perfectly. So reading the glaze label, every bottle's got a label like this. A couple things we need to know here. It says mix well. It says apply 2 to 3 coats. You're going to apply 3 coats. You're going to fire it to cone 06. It says you clean it up with water. Over here, important stuff about the number and name. So this one's 1202, neon blue. And right here it says it's safe for food containers, which is important because a lot of glazes are not safe for food containers because they're for decorative purposes only. And this one also says it's non-toxic. So every glaze that's in the cabinet that you guys are going to use are going to be safe for food containers, non-toxic, and they're going to fire to cone 06. So that you can always fill out the same. If you're taking later classes, you'll have different options, but for this class, that will always be the standard. So let's talk about, we just talked about choosing glaze. We got it in there as a review, same with the labels. So requirements for glazing your mug, I'd like you to use 3 colors. Use a color scheme. And if you want to use masking tape, you can do that. So essentially you would glaze an area, put down masking tape to protect that area, and then you can kind of sloppily glaze over that. But that masking tape will, then you'll peel off, and just make sure you don't leave any blank spots. That's completely optional. You can just freehand it too. So these are some designs that are using masking tape on some of the projects that we've had in the past. So those are good references for you. Again, you're going to pick a color scheme. So this should be familiar. If you didn't do the color theory or color theory worksheet, guess what? You're going to have to figure it out because that's part of what I'm grading this project on. So color scheme information can always be found in my room if you need a quick refresher. But you will start with one glaze you really like. So for example, I use blue in all these. So if I started with a blue and I wanted a monochromatic, I would use lighter or darker blues. If I wanted analogous, I'd use colors that were around blue. I could go to the green side or I could come to the violet side. Complementary is straight across. Split complementary is straight across but over two. So in this case, I'm using blue as one of the legs, but I started with yellow, orange, and jumped across and used blue and violet. Triad is an equal split, 3 spaces between. Tetrad is just 2 sets of complementary colors. So there's really no limit to how many glazes you can use. So again, there's the cheat sheets for the color schemes. And this is what the glaze chart looks like on the wall. These are actual tiles on my wall, and you can see they are organized by colors. So these are the abbreviations: yellow, yellow, orange, orange, etc. And then these are all neutral glazes. These are actually kind of clear. These are some that have just a different texture than the rest of them, so I put them off to the side. But that's what the colors on the wall look like. Again, you're going to fill out a glaze sheet. So you can see that there's up to 6 on this. For this project, I would definitely only do 3 or 4 glazes, but later projects you may end up doing more. So the name or the number, IN 1061. What color is it? It's in the green category according to the chart on the wall. Then I have a yellow, green, and a yellow. So that means I'm using an analogous color scheme. They're all cone 06. The result after firing, I don't know yet. I haven't seen it yet. And then this is what my color wheel looks like. So I colored that in with a crayon, put the numbers on there, and did a little sketch of what my project is going to look like. Okay. So from here, I want you to make sure you watch both demonstration videos on pouring and brushing glaze, and that way you'll know how to do that. All right. Go team.